It's great to have everybody with us today. Steve and I are going to go through and talk about the observability and management adoption of that different customers have are doing today with the different services and with the solution. And so we hope that this will be educational for how people are using it, take advantage of the different services, as well as an opportunity for us to provide a little bit of kind of foundation of what those are that they're using for those of you who may be new to observability and management.
And I'm really excited. We just, as mentioned by Catherine, had a customer advisory board, which was very exciting to hear from our customers and how they're taking advantage of observability and management in their businesses. And so we'll certainly bring out some of that. As we heard last week, that some of this information is not widely known by some. So we certainly want to make sure that everyone is taking advantage. Dave, I take it you can see the slides okay?
Yep, they look good. Let's get
Great.
rolling.
Let's go.
So, kind of, and I know now this is 3 times we've mentioned the chat, but it is an important piece because it's top of mind. It's an opportunity for 100+ people in development, product management to really hear direct feedback from the customers. And one of the big topics that we saw kind of validated is this model of deployment and where people are in their cloud journey, right? That it is, we see a full range of customers that are still largely on premises, with all the way to customers that are cloud first and have, adopted almost a full cloud solution. But I think the big takeaway is that most people are somewhere in the middle, and we see them at different stages of this.
Yeah, the thing that was also shared in our cab last week is even though there are some industries that may not be able to use quote unquote a public cloud, they still have these mixed environments and the onus is on them to manage across them. So, even if you're in one of those industries, you still have, the challenge, it just may be, a private cloud instead of a public one.
Well, it's funny you say that because then, well, what does a public cloud look like? What are the deployment options, Steve? I mean, just looking at it from a customer of Oracle's perspective, there's quite a few different types of deployments here.
Well, the piece of this, again, this is the Advantage series we're talking about. An Oracle customer can use the same technology no matter the deployment model. That's not necessarily the case in the industry with other monitoring tools. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, and even observability tools. And so, because of the work that Oracle has done within our second generation cloud and our products, they are highly instrumented with telemetry, and that's all brought together, which is an Oracle customer advantage. Now, some of you may be experiencing this today. It's frustration in parts of IT, it's frustration in DevOps. The reality is, as folks are embracing these diverse environments, these new technologies, what you may have been using for the past decade isn't necessarily working for you. No surprise, it wasn't necessarily designed for cloud or multi-cloud environments. Also, many of the customers we've spoken with have also always been challenged over time because what they had for just monitoring was not necessarily something that gave them end-to-end visibility. So there are some customers that are very advanced in their observability. Typically, ones we're talking to have been involved in cloud native development for many years. It may be a project driven by their own development organizations. But the reality is, it's not just DevOps and developers that need observability. It's needed across all organizations. And I think a point that was made by an industry analyst, Dave, to us was, it's not only for operational things, it's also for business insights as well.
Exactly. And I think that the big message here is everybody has a lot of tools, and everybody has tools that have been working for their existing solutions. But it doesn't mean that those translate well. It doesn't mean that they're not spending money on more tools. And in the end, we're still not kind of capturing in the whole set of challenges in solving these problems with a lot of the tools that are out there today.
Now, Dave, I'm glad you mentioned the word tools because almost every customer I speak with says we already have some monitoring tools. In fact, some industry analysts again have captured that customers have upwards of 50 different monitoring tools. And monitoring and observability are two distinct things. So just because you have existing tools today doesn't necessarily mean it gives you observability. So let's talk a little about that so we can help folks differentiate. The analogy I use is one that's kind of health oriented is, if you're a patient and you're being monitored by your doctor because you've had a heart attack, unfortunately, the doctor is trying to make sure that you're going to make it through that heart attack, but the event of the heart attack has occurred. So it's information after the fact. And now you're trying to react to, that unfortunate health incident versus observability is more analogous to the routine doctor visit you have annually, your physical checkup, your cholesterol check, your blood work, and all of the other, lab work you have during a year to help ensure you don't have a heart attack, that you're having a healthy lifestyle that's preventing that catastrophic event from happening. And so they are two distinct things. Now, they can be used in conjunction with each other, but the reality today is most of the customers we talk to have a bunch of monitoring tools, and some are actually trying to just reuse them for these new diverse environments, and it's not necessarily working for them.
And, Steve, one of the things that I think is happening, regardless of the type of monitoring solution that is out there, is there are indicators, right? There are flags, there are, areas that are popping up that aren't observed or aren't caught that could be very preventative, right? And so it's important to be able to lace these two together or interlace them to have your observability indicators, tied into the monitoring system.
So let's talk about why Oracle customers have an advantage again. One of the things is our strategy. We've been long time in the industry for IT operations, database management, monitoring the largest and scalable industries to date. And we now have gone into observability and management with cloud native solutions integrated, into our Gen 2 cloud platform. You want to kind of contrast these two, Dave, for folks?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we look, well, for those of you that use Enterprise Manager, you're well aware of, how it works and what it does. And, it has been around for, decades, and it is something that our development team is still, it's very strategic to Oracle. It's very strategic to the solution. And Enterprise Manager, in fact, we're in the development cycle to release a new Enterprise Manager 24C version later this year with an updated architecture, because it's an important piece. Now, when we say maximum choice, it's really to be able to, for those of you using Enterprise Manager, you can continue to use Enterprise Manager. And we have the ability to take advantage of new services, new capabilities, new functions, new features, and especially newer ones that are utilizing AI and ML and things that we can do in the cloud. We can now include that in with Enterprise Manager. We have what we call a bridge, which allows you to take the rich knowledge of Enterprise Manager and the repository and be able to utilize some of the new cloud services against that data to give you kind of a broader insight in new areas. The other thing that I want to mention is the observability and management on the right side, right, is a series of services, and we'll talk about those here in a minute. But one thing to remember is that we started building these services from the ground up probably 8 or 9 years ago. So even though the observability and management is cloud native, is kind of a second generation, they're all built upon very mature services that have been around for a very long time.
I think the other item that I talk to customers about that they're not as familiar is we've now taken even Enterprise Manager Agile. So whether you're using observability management or Enterprise Manager, we have new functionality, new support coming out practically every 6 to 8 weeks. And so there's always something new to be taking advantage of in your business. It's not like the olden days where someone might wait a couple of years before upgrading and taking advantage of something. Lots of exciting things. Okay. Now, one of the things I know, Dave, that people in the development circles know intimately is MELT, metrics, events, logs, and traces. And if I'm saying that terminology and you've never heard it and you're in IT operations, if you're a DBA, I'm not surprised. I've been a DBA myself for most of my life. But this is the vernacular that development, cloud native developers are using that's important as part of observability. These are the pillars or legs of the stool they're referenced to. And what everyone's trying to do is to bring all this different telemetry together to be making decisions, to be doing end-to-end observability, to applying AI to, etc. Another Oracle advantage for our customers is we've added S onto Melt. So we actually have the insight into SQL. Shouldn't be a surprise. We've been the database leader all these years in the industry, and we get all the way down in the SQL transaction information. And I mentioned that, Dave, because that's something other vendors aren't offering as part of their observability tooling or part of their observability platform.
That's right. And I think, if you look at the industry analysts, they talk about, three legs of the stool, right? The logs, metrics, and traces. But if you talk about it from a developer perspective, you get Melt, right? And then, so as you said, our goal here is to be open and to be able to collect all these different types of, data sets and be able to bring them into an integrated structure so we can take advantage of these both from operations, from DevOps, for developer perspectives, and DBAs get to take advantage of all these different types of data to help them do their job.
Yeah, and just to give you an example, how important that SQL can be is we now have the ability within our APM service that should some bad actor be transacting something in your database, you're getting observability as it's happening. You're getting traceability to go back and see what they have touched. There are really many different use cases across many business disciplines, whether it's IT ops, DevOps, security, etc. So we don't want people to think observability management is just for the developer or just for the DBA. It brings the overall business benefits. So why don't we talk about that, Dave? We've got some pretty exciting customer stories out there. And again, these are available out on oracle.com, but I know sometimes folks don't necessarily find some of these. So let's talk about a couple of these examples because they're pretty exciting. We don't have to wait
Yeah,
till
and
we don't have to wait till Cloud World either, because I know we're also going to have a panel in Cloud World with some more customers.
well, before we dive into it, one of the things we did at Cloud World last year is we ran Birds of a Feather, which I think was very eye-opening because we had, lots of customers across lots of different industries kind of collaborating. What are their challenges to move to modern observability? What are the things they're trying to tackle? And it was really interesting that across industries and across different sizes of companies, that they were kind of struggling with similar challenges. And of course, there were different ones. So it's good to see this, and we are going to be running a panel again, as you said, at Cloud World this year. And what we're going to talk about now are just kind of go through some of the customer situations and how they use them, or how they use the services and some of the advantages that they're getting. But this is, again, just a subset. There's a lot more, and every single one of these has a link that you can continue to drill down and read the full story or hear the interview from these customers.
Yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. So Cognizant is a story about a very large partner. And of course, Oracle has many of those. But in this case, they're using the Oracle PeopleSoft application for their business. So this isn't necessarily one of those partner story where it's about the partner and the customer. This is about actually the partner's own business. And in this case, no surprise, like other businesses, they were growing in terms of natural growth and doing acquisitions. And of course, that increases headcount. And well, in their business, they have very tight end of month closing cycles. And no surprise that delays financial processes when things may run slow. And if you have thousands of employees regularly submitting project timesheets all at the same time, you can imagine how system performance is impacted. And they had apparently, on-premise systems that were really stressed during peak times that didn't have that elasticity. Like 25,000 users submitting project timesheets concurrently. Well, the Oracle advantage that they were able to take advantage of is they moved that application that Oracle, also creates and put it onto OCI. And that not only gave them, the flexibility of OCI, but also now because OCI has the observability and management platform integrated into it, they were further able to take advantage of services from O&M that then allowed them to be more proactive, reducing their firefighting days by more than 80% within their business processes.
Yeah,
One can,
and I think it's important because, in this scenario, we mentioned time cards and, monthly end close. I think every business and every industry is either at monthly or quarterly closes where reporting time cards, whatever it may be, is there's a huge influx of load and activity, and you spend time firefighting trying to get through those periods of time. So it's really important to be able to get ahead of that and to be able to have insight into how to quickly resolve those issues because they're very costly for the company.
and I think the net result here was, the PeopleSoft application has a backend database. It's got a application server in the middle. It's on the infrastructure, in this case, OCI. And utilizing an Oracle solution, they're able to get end-to-end observability. Prior to that, who knows? Well, yeah, what observability they had, if any. Well, let's take a look at the next one. Tech. In fact, they were one of the speakers at Cloud World last year. And in this case, they're a service provider and global technology partner for legal departments, risk and compliance teams, and HR professionals. That's their business, and of course, delivering those services is of utmost importance, and service levels accordingly. And they were trying to streamline and reduce costs. That sounds familiar across many of the businesses today. Many different applications, many different monitoring solutions. In fact, over 350 Java applications they had. And they had integrations with third-party solutions like PagerDuty and Grafana. And they took a look at OCI Observability Management, application performance monitoring, and they were able to apply that in their business and reduce the multiple tools they had, and now are able to troubleshoot issues, trace across multi-span complex interactions, and drill down into the server side of their databases, their hosts, and network. And again, because of the integration capabilities of the Oracle technology, giving that overall observability. And I think Dave, you had heard a little bit more about them at Cloud World. Any other
Yeah,
aspects?
I think, this is a good example of someone who started with a single challenge to tackle, right? And really took on the service levels and being able to use APM and being able to manage the service levels looking across their application, quickly getting into the bottlenecks and kind of looking at different source issues to quickly resolve them.
Yeah, again, I think the net here is, again, if you have an application that you're running that's, critical for your business, you've got to be able to quickly identify the performance issues no matter where they're happening. And so they're leveraging, OCI, O&M to help them do that. Now, Big Lots, they're in retail. And, I'm not surprised that during, big seasons like the holidays, they have an online presence. And that's very important to their business to be selling goods through that. And we know what happens during the holidays. A whole bunch of people get online, they start ordering things, and often that stresses things out, or in some cases, even breaks things for some retail vendors. So in the case of Big Lots, it was very important for them to make sure that they were able to meet the demand. And so they were able to, you know, horizontally and vertically scale in response to holiday demands because their dedicated hardware just wasn't doing it for them. So they moved over to OCI and took advantage of its flexibility as well as its scalability to essentially help them do that and save some money is what was shared with us. And again, in their case, they're not just using a singular tool. They're utilizing the APM solution we were just talking about with MeterTech, but also OCI stack monitoring, giving them the ability to essentially monitor all the components of their applications. For some customers, those are cloud native and very custom. For others, it's Oracle packaged applications, and that's why we've got OCI stack monitoring as part of the APM solution and O&M portfolio.
Yeah, and one of the takeaways here is just looking at the sheer size, right? Not all retailers are as big as Big Lots, but with 1,400 stores across the United States and them growing with the industry in the way that, pre-COVID to post-COVID, how people's online retail programs had to adjust to, move not just from online orders, but online orders with in-store pickups and, different variations and bring their whole catalog online. So this is an area that, they were able to do, and the observability solution, it was able to grow with that and be able to work as they brought on those new services online, continuing with the challenge of the seasonality of the business.
And we've got just a couple more, Dave. We cherry picked a few, and again, there's more of these on oracle.com. Now, this is a customer that's out in Europe, and part of their business is consulting for corporate information systems on essentially ERP, CRM type e-commerce applications and helping make sure their customers are meeting GDPR. So for those not familiar with GDPR, in the European Union, the General Data Protection Regulation Act is very important. It also seems to be making its way here in the U.S. and for global companies of concern as well. And so being able to help their customers, meet that regulation, they needed to bring together a lot of different log sources, and not just only from Oracle type of technologies, but multiple industries and other types of technologies outside of what Oracle offers. And they had staff that were, sometimes spending apparently all day just watching individual, ingestions and agents and things. But now they're able to be alerted proactively when something gets triggered from observability and management. And that has helped them be able to focus on other parts of their business, improving their operations and, lowering costs. And in this case, they don't have to go through a lot of extensive activities to enable, new log sources or accept log sources that may be custom to a customer. So they're being able to offer more value in their services to their customers as we continue to deliver new capabilities and support in observability and management. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, I think moving, from the observability role, right? Security is always interesting and it's important, but there's also other parts of the company that manage, full SIMs and the security aspects. This is an interesting case because this is using OCI logging analytics to look at it from an observability, but also a security perspective. And as you mentioned, being able to bring on all of these different types of logs and know how to ingest them, right? You can have a log that is interesting from an observability perspective, but then that same log has lots of information in it that you're only looking at from a security side. And so being able to parse those quickly and easily and being able to customize those or pick up predefined parsers makes it possible to go in and get hundreds and hundreds of different types of logs to round out your solution.
I'm glad you mentioned security, Dave, because I think every day in the news now we see something. And it used to be, I know when I was in the Fortune 50, there was some type of security manager, and I thought as a DBA it was their job. But now with observability and management, it's everyone's job in the business to be very aware of what is happening and real time. So observability management can be used in very unique ways and by people outside of security organizations. And so, yeah, we've got some customers doing some very interesting things. And the most interesting customer, Dave, is ourselves. You want to talk about this one?
Well, arguably, easily one of the more difficult customers to work with. But this scenario is not probably relatable to most businesses because of the sheer size, but it is a really important piece of the story, which is we're not building services to just solve challenges. Everything that we do from an architectural perspective is to be able to scale as the business grows. And, it doesn't get much bigger than managing Oracle's cloud and doing that underneath. And so that is an opportunity where we have, obviously regular meetings and build lots of new features and capabilities to be able to handle the sheer size volume and, being able to roll that up into functional dashboards, functional space, functional, alarms to be able to solve these issues. The other thing is like any other deployment, it started as a rollout of, utilizing one service and capturing that and then bringing on another service. And as you start using more of them together, you get to take advantage of those integrated services of looking at both performance and in this case, the underlying logs that are tied to those.
So, Dave, that's just a few of our customer stories. And at this point, I know that this is kind of the inaugural session for the new series. Let's go ahead and kind of set the stage on some of the technologies we'll be talking about and having some of our subject matter expert product managers going into deep dives on. So let's go give some folks a little bit more background on what these OCI observability and management solutions are.
Sure. And we can do a quick rundown of this and we'll talk about this lots more. And each of these services, on the top row here that you see application performance monitoring, stack monitoring, logging analytics, database and OS management capabilities and capacity planning, SQL insights through Ops insights. These are what we call the advanced services that are tied to a lot of the stories that we just talked to that, customers are taking advantage of because these services are very vast and capable within each of their own areas and are a complete solution, but are also integrated right to work together. Um, but the nice thing about this is the platform, the observability platform is the OCI platform. And so you have these advanced services running on top of foundational services. So in the middle row, right, you have your foundational monitoring service, notification, logging, streaming, your resource manager, and all of those are running on top of the OCI infrastructure where you have your foundational compute, storage, network, and security. And so it is part of your OCI solution, but it is a set of services that have, a very strong set of capabilities to be used against all different areas of your deployments on OCI. But also, if you look to the left, it depends, it doesn't depend on where you have it deployed, your applications. You might have applications that are partially on premises, as well as in OCI. You might have them on AWS or Azure. And so we have the ability to collect data from all of these different cloud and deployment models to take advantage of the observability and management services.
Yeah, OCI Observability Management, the platform itself, is able to ingest huge volumes of telemetry data and then process that with AI-based machine learning technology. It's essentially a big data lake of observability data, and so then layering on top of these are the services that bring out unique insights in particular domains. Now, the other thing that's really nice about observability and management is the past problem with monitoring, where typically a monitoring tool was by an individual role. And so, for instance, a DBA might be monitoring something, but you didn't want the developer to see all that, right, Dave? And there was no way to shield it to them. There are stringent security type of views and dashboards and ways to expose the observability data in an applied way by role. So there's flexibility in all that data viewing as well. And
Yeah.
I'm sure some of our PMs will talk about and give examples of that in future sessions. Now, I know that we're Oracle, Dave, and a lot of folks will say, oh, well, this must be all proprietary technology and just things that Oracle is doing that aren't applicable to any of the industries. But quite the contrary. We're quite involved in all the open source, communities. We are taking advantage and supporting things such as Open Telemetry and Prometheus and FluentD. Our unified agent, and we will talk about that in the future, is unique in its industry based upon how it's able to get all this observability data and then share it with all these different types of observability solutions. Solving, again, an old problem from the monitoring days where every single monitoring tool you got wanted to put an agent onto your system. And being able to do things, agently right off the control plane is, certainly what, developers want to be doing. So as customers move things onto IaaS and PaaS onto OCI, as they apply application server and database technology that's instrumented, we take advantage of all of that within our collections.
And I think that, depending on where it is and how we can we can collect the data, right? We built in to make it as easy as possible, right? So it's automatically built in into the OCI compute. You can start to pull all of your logs immediately, right? You can be able to look at all of your network. And as we get into where, more complicated deployments, right, this is where we have the unified agent. And the agent has an architecture where you can plug in different types of collection mechanisms depending on how you're using it. But a single agent for both on cloud or in the cloud, as well as on premises. So you're not managing lots of different types of agents that are proprietary, right? And and then I think, you touched on this right at the beginning, but it's really important that our services, as they were designed are able to bring in open source telemetry, and open telemetry, Fluentd, if you whether it's logs or application performance data, all of these are able to be ingested into the observability and management solution.
Now, the next one is not really a surprise to DBAs, but I talked to a lot of DBAs who aren't following observability yet. And we have a long history going back decades on instrumentation in the database, probably more than anyone in the industry. And yet we have customers who, continue to seek out yet more databases. Be sure, if you're using the Oracle database, take advantage of all that deep instrumentation and observability that's already collected. So some of our customers using Enterprise Manager know about that. But I mean, if you just look at the data dictionary documentation, and I used to do a poster many years ago, it was about 300 pages, Dave, of instrumentation. It's now almost 3,000 pages of instrumentation that is in the database. And when you're using OCI Observability and Management solution, that type of instrumentation you're able to fully take advantage of. So again, I speak to folks that are still trying to apply some old, third-party monitoring tool and, trying to just take some of the basics of health information. And it's like, hey, wait a second. You probably want to take a look at this because there is so much great information already collected. Why don't you take advantage of it? And again, combine it with all that other telemetry.
Right, because 2,785 pages, even virtual, are still 2,000, are still a ton. And our development team, right, both the observability and management development team works hand in hand with deep parts of the database development team to make sure that this is built into the solution. And so, it's very valid point, Steve.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, our solutions are agile at this point. And so about every 6 weeks, we've got new support and capabilities are typically available to our customers. There are no concept of, extra options or packs or things on the cloud. Customers who are using the service are able to take advantage of those as the services are updated. So definitely an Oracle customer advantage. So it goes without saying that, like other vendors, we have a complete comprehensive set of observability and management solutions. But one of the differentiators is we're applying these as solutions versus, having yet another laundry list of observability tools. I think there's a lot of folks that come to our folks in the field and are saying, hey, I've got these different tools. Can you kind of, compare them? And so we've grouped them into these focus areas because it's not necessarily just the application of a singular observability tool. It's a combination of them, based upon, what you're trying to accomplish. So why don't you kind of walk folks through these groupings, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, each of the services being, a full business solution, helping you run your business, giving you insight to help you make decisions, but being able to bring these together and by design, looking at using a layer from your applications, from the mid stack all the way down into the database and the SQL running, the SQL calls from the application running in the database, is where we look at observability for Oracle applications. And that's using, as well as the logs underneath, right? So all of those services working together to help you define what the application is, how it's performing, and look at it. And in something like eBusiness Suite, and we're continuing to roll out new functionality all the time, is have kind of a one-click discovery and setup. And so since we understand the application, this is, we're able to define it very quickly and get it up and running. Now, different services and different parts of the services that you want to use as a combination for the solution of managing cloud native applications becomes very important, because then as developers are creating these apps, need to be able to get in and understand and do tracing diagnostics, look at the logs, and have that integrated view to move quickly through those. So that's an important solution. And then depending on how the cloud native apps are deployed, whether you're running on Kubernetes or whatever it may be, being able to get quick dashboards, being able to see performance and resolve issues quickly is important. And
The
then, yeah, go ahead.
the other thing here, Dave, is we're a vendor for these different areas. We are a vendor of applications. We are a vendor of database. We are a vendor of cloud infrastructure. And we're able to apply best practices that we've even learned in our own business, the business case you spoke about earlier, to these areas that our customers, can further take advantage of. And in a minute, we'll see how we can even take it one step further.
Yeah, and so the other two areas, AI ops is an area that's been growing for quite a while, but it's important because not all AI ops solutions are equal, right? It's how the machine learning is applied to the information that it has, and as we've been talking about, for a lot of the time today, is all the different types of information that we bring in to then make decisions against is very important. So what you're running the machine learning algorithms against, how they're being tuned, gives you this ability to get into predictive and insightful opportunities to make decisions within your operations. And then lastly, database management. We'll run a dedicated solution or a dedicated session on this to go into the depth of starting at the high level of being able to look at all your databases, both from a fleet perspective, whether on-prem and cloud, whether, and then go down and look all the way through the performance, understand all the diagnostics and tuning. So there's a full solution around your database capabilities.
So before we wrap up today, Dave, you mentioned it, AI ops. So you can't go by today without having a session with having something not related to AI. And again, we know that as a vendor in this area, all that data, it's just insurmountable to be used, by humans. You just can't staff up enough people to go through all that types of data. And so, as you mentioned, for many years now, we've been doing, rule-based type, development. We've been applying machine learning type algorithms, and we see the industry moving towards AI-based solutions. So before we go today, Dave, you want to talk a little bit about where we're
Yeah, let me
headed?
let me just quickly touch on this because it is important that, when we look at where we are today with the Oracle Observability and Management solution and services, is we've been doing AI for, many years, if not decades, being able to go against all these expert systems that we have pre-built into a lot of the different Oracle products. We've spent a lot of time talking about the collection of the data because that matters, right? You need to be able to have all this data to be able to get good insights, to be able to understand where the issues are, and address them. So we've talked a lot about the collect. That's all there today. Looking at analyze, right? So analyzing is looking at both structured and unstructured data, looking at clustering patterns. We have an area called linking, which allows you to look at a product ID or something like that and follow it all the way through the different stacks or the different layers of the stack through the application transaction and be able to understand what's happening, performance, and all the associated data around it. Looking at seasonality, looking at smart baselining and pattern recognition. All of this is there today. One of the interesting thing is, as I said, we've been building a lot of these new services we started building them, 8 or 9 years ago. We've continuously defined and refined our AI ML to really be looking at the observability and management type corner use cases, right? So it's not just generic kind of general ML. We're constantly fine tuning it to get it very specific to this area of business. Now, once we have all that, we're able to look at that. This is where we can start laying out, looking at predictions, understanding based on our recent behavior, what's going to be happening in the future. So this gets into a couple different areas. We look at resource planning, we look at capacity planning, we can look at trends. And one of the kind of new areas is looking at predictive, SQL plan changes, which is very exciting. And moving into then the generate piece of the Gen AI movement is we're currently working on being able to put a natural language support at the higher level of the observability layer, which then gives you support um, to get information across all the different services, right? If you're in logging analytics, you can go in and use a specific language to get lots of information. You can do the same in APM, but this will layer it up across that and be able to generate answers and give insightful dynamic dashboards and different sets of data for you to be able to make your decisions. When you can define whether what is automatically put into place versus what you still want to manually make decisions on, because I think there's a whole nother discussion around that. So we're very excited because this is our modern look at kind of how we're bringing all of this together and the direction that we're going. So we're very excited to showcase a lot of this at Cloud World coming up here in a few months.
Yeah, if I net this out, Dave, this is exciting because we've got essentially that end-to-end visibility built into our product offerings and infrastructure. And we're going to have then the application of AI on top of that versus individual tools just having AI, which just, now you have got AI arguing with each other instead of people. So yeah, it's going to be pretty exciting to be at Cloud World this year. Well, it goes without saying, we continue to make, progress out there in the industry, and we continue to get coverage from, industry analysts. Certainly, if you're now working with different cloud vendors, multi-cloud is part of your business as well. So here's yet another one of those types of coverages that we continue to get. And so we want to make sure that, folks are also, plugged into these type of things when they're making their business decisions. So as we start to wrap up the session here today, as Catherine mentioned at the beginning, we just had our customer advisory board in person last week in Redwood Shores, and thank you to our customers who attended. Their direct input feedback was just wonderful, and it is being used as part of the strategy and planning going forward, of course. If you're a customer who's on today and you've got a story that we haven't talked about that you'd like to share, either directly with us internally or externally, please let us know. And here's the information on how to get involved with the customer advisory board.
Yeah, and if you're an Oracle account person, representing your customer on today's call, and it's interesting to them, also feel free to reach out to us internally. We're constantly, trying to build the program with, thought leaders, and it's a great opportunity, and it's something that's in a growing phase right now. So we do an in-person that we've been talking about, but we also do quarterly virtual cabs, and there's lots of different ways to participate and benefits to get out of it, even if you're not getting on a plane and coming, to an in-person event. Hey, Steve, real quick, what a good question that I saw come across while we were talking is someone was asking more about Enterprise Manager 24C release. So I just wanted to quickly address that for any of those who are interested, because I think it's kind of at a broad level, is the Enterprise Manager 24C release is targeted to be released later this year. It'll be 24.1. And it's going to bring in a new lightweight architecture, containerized architecture that allows for a lot of different benefits for both from a deployment perspective, both from speed and security, as well as bring in a lot of new capabilities for the targets that you're managing. And so we're going to continue to build on, as Steve said, the agile, release model that we've moved Enterprise Manager to almost a monthly cadence. We're going to continue to build on that and make it, even more lightweight and faster and more capable and more modern. So
The
we
the other thing I
we
like is part of that strategy, Dave, with Enterprise Manager is we're cross-pollinating. And so, we've got things that, people have known to love in Enterprise Manager, but now it's available in OCI, database management. And, it's not one or the other. You can use both solutions, side by side. You don't have to pick or choose.
And let me just do a shameless plug here, because we don't have a slide on it, is we are looking at doing an Enterprise Manager informational beta for 24C later this year. So if this is something that is of interest to you, drop it in chat or a QA to us. And if you'd like more information, we're happy to share that with you.
Well, that being said, Dave, we're getting short on time, so we want to make sure that, again, we've set the stage here for the whole new series for these different type of O&M solutions and services offerings. We're bringing in the big guns, our subject matter expert PMs for those services. And so coming up next, we've got Kumar Varun. And I know that folks who are using Kubernetes environments, there's a lot of complexity. So if you've got Kubernetes, considering Kubernetes, or just interested in it, definitely join us for the next one in the
Yeah.
series. And these are also being recorded.
Yeah, and Steve, for this next series, this kind of takes it down another level from what we talked about today. So these are looking at kind of strategic solutions for monitoring, for cloud native applications on Kubernetes, for on Oracle database and Fusion apps and Oracle Integration Cloud. So you're going to see kind of out of box dashboards, capabilities. It's going to be a very exciting session. So I encourage folks to attend and learn, take it to the next level.
And the last thing we always like to do is end up with a resources slide. We know sometimes you get a few emails from Oracle, and not always do our communications make it through. So you can proactively, use any of these resources from our team. The blog site is the one I always recommend top of my list. There's about 2 new blogs every week where our PMs are talking about, new releases, ways to use the technology, apply it in your business, tips and tricks, best practices. If you're not already subscribed to our observability blog site, it's definitely one of the top resources the team offers. The other recently is some new how-to videos in 5 minutes or less. Understanding how to do things with the O&M services and solutions. So, lots of great resources, to learn, including live labs. I still find people who aren't familiar with live labs where you can go get an environment and use one of these solutions, and it's free. All you do is go spin up an environment, and it's in the cloud, and you're able to learn about it without having to, deploy anything in your own environment. So again, lots of great resources. So any other questions, Dave, we've got outstanding out there?
I think we've hit most of them through just our flowing conversation. So I don't see any other ones that I need to pull out.
Yep, that's right. I don't see any more questions either. Thank you everyone for joining in this call. That concludes our session for today.